Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening for our latest virtual edition of FashMash Pioneers. We are thrilled to be having a conversation about one of the most important topics relative to the future of the fashion industry, and that is the circular economy, where a world of opportunity awaits us. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Arthur, and I'm one of the co-founders of FashMash. If you haven't joined us before, we are a community dedicated to shaping the future of fashion. We have a membership built up of change makers, entrepreneurs, innovators, proactive leaders, and leaders to be. Our aim is to constantly encourage open conversation and sharing of ideas to help move the industry forward, and we're thrilled tonight to be doing exactly that. Before we do, a quick reminder to get your thinking caps on yourselves, as we will host a Q&A session at the end of the talk. You can submit your questions in advance via the Q&A tool here on Zoom, and we will come to them shortly. And please also do share your thoughts from this conversation using the FashMash hashtag on social media too. So next, I also want to say a huge thank you to our sponsor, Klaviyo. We have the honour of having Louise Reed from their team here with us this evening to tell you a little bit more about what they do and how they're helping to feed into this conversation around new business models particularly. So Louise, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having us here tonight at this wonderful FashMash Pioneers event with Jane Shepherdson, a renowned figure in UK fashion retail and someone who's also very passionate about supporting small businesses. As Rachel mentioned, my name's Louise and I'm joining here from Klaviyo. We're also a business that works with a number of UK fashion brands as well as e-commerce brands across the world. And I thought this would actually be a fantastic opportunity for us to introduce ourselves, what we do, and how we're supporting e-commerce businesses of all shapes and sizes across the world. I'm sure perhaps many of you will be familiar already with Klaviyo. Perhaps you're already using the marketing platform for your business. Perhaps you've noticed that we've been sponsoring and working with FashMash for a number of months now, or actually perhaps you're not familiar with us at all, and I will share a bit more on us shortly. But a warm welcome to you all, particularly to the Klaviyo community and everyone on this call. For those of you who aren't familiar with Klaviyo, Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform. Whether you're starting out or you're running a well-known brand, you'll get everything you need to build a customer relationship that lasts a lifetime. If you're a marketer or an e-commerce brand owner, you'll be able to send memorable emails, text messages, and create personalized web experiences all through one platform. We are passionate about helping businesses grow, and in fact, on average, e-commerce businesses that use Klaviyo grow their revenue 46% in just 1 year. And that's why actually more than 50,000 businesses across the world trust Klaviyo to help us grow their businesses, lots of which are already part of the FashMash community. If you want to find out more about Klaviyo or try us out for free, you can do at klaviyo.com/FashMash. I won't speak for any longer. I don't want to hold back from the main event of this evening, but thank you again and a warm welcome to you all. And I'll pass back to Rachel now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Louise. We are so grateful to have your support this year, helping us make all of these conversations possible. As everyone watching tonight will know, the proceeds from this evening all go to SmartWorks, a brilliant charity that dresses and coaches unemployed women for job success, of which our speaker, Jane, is a trustee. On that note then, on to the main event. I am utterly thrilled to introduce Jane Shepherdson CBE as our next pioneer. Jane is quite literally one of the most influential people in British retail, having spent several decades leading businesses, including Topshop, which she reinvented to become the high street brand we all knew and loved during her tenure. And then later as the CEO of Whistles. There, she took what was a slightly tired business and turned it into one of the most well-regarded contemporary brands in the UK with global reach. Today, however, she's looking at fashion through a new lens. She is now both the director of the London Fashion Fund, which invests in fashion and fashion tech businesses with environmental and social responsibility at heart. And she is the chair of MyWardrobe HQ, the UK's leading luxury fashion rental platform. So it's less now today about new, and more for Jane, as it is about rewearing, reusing, and of course, sharing. Which then leads us on to the conversation for tonight, a deep dive on fashion and the circular economy, on everything from rental to resale, repair to recycle. We know this industry needs to change, something COVID has only heightened and the climate crisis is making us ever more aware of as an emergency. So I can't wait to hear from Jane about just how we make that viable at scale. On that note, please therefore welcome her and my wonderful co-founder, Rosanna, to our virtual stage.
Hello, hello. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Rosanna.
Great to be here with you this evening. I think I want to start by saying I last interviewed you 18 months ago, and what a lot has changed. So that was April 2019. And there was one thing that you said that really stuck with me, and I'm actually going to quote you because I think it's such a good starting off point for this evening. The fashion industry has changed more in the last 3 years than in my whole career. People are finally beginning to think that the non-stop consumption has to stop. We are only at the beginning of that change. We have to change what we are doing. Rental is the future. How apt, therefore, that we're discussing the circular economy tonight and focusing on that topic. And also that we are on the cusp of lockdown number 2, which makes it, I think, even more important. I couldn't think of a better luminary of industry to give perspective on this, and also on the impending challenge or opportunity in retail, depending which way you look at this. So to begin, for context, this time last year, it felt like you couldn't open a fashion editorial without rental being the headline. And the headlines were saying that rental was going to be worth 2 billion by 2023. And I think there was also this collective feeling that rental brought the joy back to fashion. And a lot of consumers were feeling very conflicted about its effect on the planet at this point, and its effect on the social side of sustainability as well. Then the pandemic happened. So really my first question is, where do we stand now?
Well, the pandemic came at a very, very difficult time for rental. It's interesting what you say about not being able to pick up a magazine because everyone was talking about it. But what is also strange is that everyone is still talking about it. I don't know how many interviews I've done since lockdown talking about rental and how, you know, it really is the next big thing and it's so exciting and that it's almost mainstream. And of course, the irony is that during lockdown and now, of course, there are no events to go to. We're not allowed to go out, so there's no point in renting anything. However, it hasn't sort of in any way curbed my enthusiasm for rental. I still think it's absolutely the right way to go. I think there's been so much positivity towards rental within the whole lockdown, and I think it's all bound up in this whole. I think people have certainly embraced sustainability or being more responsible, certainly, and I think rental is a part of that, and I think, as you said, it's a way for us to be responsible but also to still enjoy it. And for me, that's the most important thing. You know, I see fashion as another form of creativity, like any of the arts, really, which is to be really enjoyed. And I think rental for me allows me to do that, so therefore I can still really enjoy this creativity that I love, but I can do it in a responsible or a more responsible way. I'm not saying rental is totally responsible, and I'm sure we're going to get into that later, but it is actually, it's much as a more responsible. But as you say, we are in a pandemic. At the moment, rental businesses, to be perfectly honest, are kind of just holding. We're on pause, if you like. We get the occasional rentals. We get the occasional people who want to go have a Zoom call and they want to wear a pair of Chanel earrings or a blouse with a big sleeve or something that looks, you know, kind of exciting. But generally, it is on hold. We've been doing slightly better with resale because we're also a resale platform. And the strange thing is, or maybe it isn't strange, I don't know, but the pieces that we've actually been selling have tended to be iconic pieces. So pieces people perhaps have thought a while about, you know what, I'd really like that Dior handbag. And maybe it's because now they're not buying other things. They feel, actually, you know what, I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to buy I'm going to buy it secondhand from MyWardrobe HQ. Or I'm going to buy those Chanel earrings that I've wanted for a while. So that's been, I suppose, a surprise to us, is that they are buying pieces, but they tend to be much more iconic pieces.
So the challenge is obviously the lack of events. I wanted to pose a question to you, which I'm sure you read the New York Times article, Sweatpants Forever.
Oh God, yes.
That the fashion industry has, I can't remember the exact verb, but something like died or self-imploded. It was a really striking long read. So my question to you, Jane, is it a case of Sweatpants Forever now?
Well, no, but fashion is notoriously cyclical, isn't it? I mean, we get used to one thing, and then by 5 minutes later, we're completely bored of doing that. And I have to say, much as I love slobbing around in sweatpants, and I do, I also have missed opportunities to go out and get dressed up. In fact, I went to like a real life meeting last week before the news of the next lockdown. And I was so excited getting dressed up, going down there, chatting over a coffee about nothing, and talking about each other's clothes. And I really enjoy it. So yeah, I think the whole kind of slobbing around in the house thing, yeah, of course that people will need clothes to do that in, but I also think people will get bored of it and they'll think, you know what, I really want to dress up.
Do you think there might be another trend maybe in lockdown too then? Maybe people will just...
That's what I'm hoping for, yes.
Crossed. And as you said, resale is very much a key part of the platform, just as much as rental. And resale is a success story of lockdown. To quote a little statistic, which I always love, back in April, Depop saw a 90% increase in traffic, when at the same period, retail was down 18.1%. So it's bucking this trend. For you, the upswing is around the iconic pieces, and did that continue in between? Has that been kind of since the start of March?
Well, it actually, early on, it was more about iconic pieces, but actually that has changed within the last couple of months, especially as we're moving into autumn. We have a lot of pieces of knitwear on the site, which are kind of perhaps not at the real luxury end, but are sort of more at the middle market, more the sort of Ganni type brands, Bella Freud. So if you buy one of those on the site and it's secondhand but well looked after, it'll probably set you back about £100, maybe £150. And actually that's the sort of investment that a lot of people are considering at the moment. We know it's going to be cold, we know we're going to have to buy some knitwear, and I think it is slightly changing. So perhaps people are starting to buy more everyday pieces from us than just the iconic pieces that they thought about for a while before.
Mm-hmm. And so now looking at circularity as a whole, just as Rachel mentioned at the beginning, it is obviously so much more than resale and rental. Last month, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation released a report, their vision of a circular economy for the fashion industry. And it outlines this urgent industry-wide transformation that is required within the next 10 years, because that's the deadline that we have for the climate crisis. Based on this circular vision, we need products that are, in their own words, made to be made again, as well as ones that are made from safe and recycled or renewable inputs. In other words, for the circular economy to be a true reality, we need to adopt all of these versions. So rental, reuse, recycle, repurpose, repair, and resale. So I would love your view on this, and how would you encourage mass uptake of this complete transformation in industry?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? It's in fact, with my other hat on for London Fashion Fund, I've seen a lot of businesses, and in fact we've invested in a lot of businesses that kind of cover that whole spectrum. So the first one, in fact, that we invested in is Clothes Doctor, and I don't know if you know Clothes Doctor, but it's basically how to extend the life of your existing clothes by either repairing them, upcycling them, or even just knowing how to wash them properly so that they're not going to fall apart. So there's that side of it, and I think that's kind of something that we're just starting to get used to. I mean, she's actually doing very, very well, which I'm which I'm very pleased about, but it is still small scale at the moment. We have another business, Bean London, which where she takes leather offcuts from the tanneries that are just waste product, really, from the luxury handbag, the tanneries that they use, and she repurposes them into bags. In fact, she uses the linings of the bags come from fishing nets that they've dragged in from the sea. So everything about the product that she makes is recycled. I would say here, though, that I've also seen an awful lot of other businesses that have done the same thing but haven't done it well. And I think it's really, really important to say that the design element of this has to be high enough. I mean, nobody wants to buy something that, quite frankly, looks like it's been recycled and looks like a piece of shit. We want to buy something that looks like a beautiful bag or a beautiful wallet or whatever, and that has enough of a design element that it fits our aesthetic. So I think that's super important. And actually, within the whole kind of sustainable fashion spectrum, what annoys me the most, I think, is people creating product that is sustainable but looks awful. And quite often they'll say, well, it's made with organic cotton, and I've checked the supply chain, and people aren't being abused within the supply chain, and that's all very well, but if it's awful, it shouldn't be out there, because it's just more stuff. Quite honestly, we've got enough stuff. So I think it's really important that if you're going to do this, and I have seen it done really well, that you look at every element of it, and that the design element is a big part of that.
And it's interesting there that you mention new businesses and this new talent coming through. And I want to talk more about your work with London Fashion Fund a bit later, because I think the issue that the Ellen MacArthur report is pointing out, that it's actually businesses, established businesses and brands, that also need to make that change. And therein lies the huge challenge. And how would you say we can get boardroom buy-in for this complete change, not only in business model, but in approach to production, design?
I think it's a really, really difficult one. From where I sit, having seen established businesses trying to change, number one, you need leadership that really believes that change is necessary, not that change is going to be done because it's expected and because that's what the press are after. You need leadership that actively really, really wants to change, and I think that's quite a hard thing to find. And then I think it's the convincing business that, in a sense, you can't afford not to. So I think that the case has to be put that actually being sustainable will actually save you money in the long term, and will actually make your business a better business. And I think that's really, really difficult, because at the moment most of these big businesses are at the stage where they're tinkering around at the edges. Maybe perhaps they're sort of, for example, some of the big high street chains like H&M have a conscious collection. Well, I think the conscious collection is something like, 3% of the total output of H&M. And that's just not good enough, really isn't. It would be fine if, for example, the conscious collection was there to teach the brand how to move forward sustainably in its entire collection. Then I would fully support that, but I'm not sure that is the case. But I think that is a way for larger brands to move into it, is to sort of start to try and do it in a small scale, learn the lessons from that, and then start to expand it and start to move into scale. But I mean, the fashion industry is about selling us stuff that we don't need. And we have to, and until we can really start to change people's behavior a little bit into thinking, well, actually I don't need that, or fashion, seeing fashion, whether it's cheap or it's expensive, but seeing it as a luxury item to be really, really enjoyed and treated well. I think that's kind of where we need to get to.
Yeah, that taps in. This is off piece, but that taps into co-founder Rachel wrote a brilliant piece for EcoAge and Vogue Business about fashion's anti-growth future, and this idea that actually all of these efforts that we're making in sustainability are just outpaced by the commercial growth each year of brands, because they are built on you need more, you need more, you need more, and it's finding that balance. My next, I suppose. You mentioned this about the fact that big brands at the moment are struggling in the pandemic, inevitably. Yeah. On the bright side, I suppose, if we're looking at a circular future, is it that they have taken this moment to look at their inventory and think we need to rethink this, because it's exposed the issues of the way that traditional linear model works? Billions of pounds worth of stock from this last spring summer season were left at a standstill in the shops, or equally with manufacturers and distribution centres, and that was when we were in deep lockdown. And we produce 100 billion items every year, so I dread to think how many are going to go to landfill this year. And there was obviously all the huge discounting, which is never in any brand's interest. So there could be this moment for opportunity here, to create a more resilient business model. On a rental level, first of all, I know that you were mentioning these big brands dipping into this circularity. So Urban Outfitters, H&M, Anthropologie, all of them have run rental as a pilot scheme, but it really was just that. And if it's going to be that, without the ultimate business buy-in, there's not really going to be the longevity. It's more of a PR story. So I suppose I'm wondering, what is holding businesses back from integrating this fully? And what are their challenges that they are facing if they were to want to integrate rental more fully into the business?
Well, this is such a huge topic. Going back to what you were saying about businesses obviously needing to grow all the time. One of the issues, of course, is capitalism. Is that that's the model under which all business functions at the moment. Well, in the world at the moment, and that means that you need to provide growth every year, and to do that means that you'll be producing things that the people don't want. I mean, it's got to the stage with fashion at the moment where I don't know how familiar people are with the term buying markdown, but the big businesses buy markdown. It's not hidden. You start to go through the plans and you look at what you're buying for the year and you buy markdown, which means that you're buying. You know that you're going to be marking something down, so you're buying stuff to replace that. So until you need to come right back, and it's a risky thing for a business to say, actually, you know what, I'm not going to have any markdown this year, so I'm not going to buy it. I'm only going to sell full price sales, and unfortunately, it's a great idea, and if your product is absolutely perfect and your customers love it, then you're fine. But otherwise, if there's something wrong with it, or if there's too much of it, then again you'll have to mark it down. I'm not saying this because I know what the answer is, because I don't know what the answer is, but I think it does require quite a brave attitude from business to start to pull back. And I am actually starting to see small businesses, again, it's small businesses who are actually looking at bespoke production, who are asking their customers to pay for the fabric up front before they place their orders, which is incredible. But again, it's small scale, and I can't see that really getting to a bigger scale. The question of rental and of whether brands can do it. I've been thinking a lot about this because I've been talking to a lot of young designers whose businesses at the moment rely on wholesale mostly. And from their point of view, it seems to me that if they're selling something at wholesale, they're selling it for a third of the selling price, the eventual selling price. So in effect, if they decided to rent their collections, say 50% of the collection, rent it, 50% of it, wholesale it, they wouldn't actually lose very much money. If people bought into the whole rental idea, because they would get as much money renting each piece. In fact, a lot more if each piece rented, say, 20 times or more. I think the quality of the product obviously has to be good enough so that it can actually be rented out more than 15, 20 times. And I think that's one of the issues that fast fashion are definitely going to have. And actually, I was at SmartWorks today dressing women, and we have a lot of donations from a lot of different brands, luxury brands and from high street brands. And it's so obvious for us looking at some of these high street brands where the donations that we get just really aren't good enough, you know, for us to actually to give to women who are going for interviews, because they just haven't lasted that well.
Yeah. And talking of, now I know that obviously Whistles is not a fast fashion brand by any way, shape or form, but if we were to look at your career at Topshop and at Whistles, if you were in that position again now, how would you approach it through your new lens? Because I'm sure a lot of our viewers know, but maybe say if they don't, you did have this kind of moment of epiphany, didn't you, where you went traveling?
Yes.
Tell us more. Yeah, I'd love to know, you know, Jane 2020 in those roles, how would that perhaps change your vision for the brands?
You know what, I kind of always felt when I was both in Topshop and in Whistles that I wanted to reflect exactly what it was that was happening in society, as well as what my customers wanted. So I wanted to give people something that would excite them, because it was totally relevant. It was totally now, and I think in looking through that lens, I would have been looking at Topshop and saying, well, for Christ's sake, you know, people want upcycled, they want recycled, they want rental. You know, we brought in things in Topshop that at the time, you know, we had deliveries on a moped back in the 90s. If you lived in London, we would take rails of clothes to your house for parties if you wanted one. You know, I mean, we wanted to do things that people really wanted. Now, if people now really want something that's much more sustainable, you know, you can create a marketplace within Topshop. You can start to change the model. You can start to move. There's no reason why Topshop couldn't have a rental collection, you know. So maybe they have to use different fabrics. They have to make sure that there's enough longevity in the product. But I don't see that there isn't a way of doing it, you know. And certainly with Whistles, there's no question, you know, that Whistles could easily have a rental side of their business. It's very straightforward. And I also think that you know, if you want to be authentic and you want to say to your customers, look, I really care about this business, then you have to do things that reflect their desires. And if their desires at the moment are for something that's recycled or something that's using up all the plastic bottles that we have, then I think you have to find a way of doing that. So I took a year out, and I kind of thought, I can't really justify doing what I'm doing in the same way that I'm doing it or have done it for so long. And that I have to try and not right the wrong, because that sounds really kind of, you know, makes me sound like I'm a bit full of myself or whatever. But I think I kind of felt like, you know, I must try and put the experience that I have into trying to change behavior, perhaps is the best way of doing it. I mean, I think fundamentally it's our behavior that has to change. I don't think you can actually say to people, you can't go out and have that gorgeous new dress. You can't buy any new dresses. You know, you just can't have them. I don't see the point of saying that, because it's just not going to happen. I think you have to find ways of giving people a viable alternative to that, but making sure that viable alternative is exciting as well, and, you know, fulfills their desires.
You've actually just moved on perfectly and kind of answered my next question, because I wanted to play devil's advocate. I actually have a couple of, because I'm a huge advocate of rental. I rent my own wardrobe, but there are the naysayers, and there are those that, I think, first of all, one thing I wanted to ask about, because so much sustainability is the privilege problem arises. And there are those who say that rental is only available, it's overpriced for what it is, or that it's only available within a certain geographic area and it doesn't reach enough people, it's not right for a lot of people. There's also a lot of people, I think this is perhaps more 2019, but we're talking about hygiene issue. I'd love your thoughts on that side of things.
Yeah. Do you know what? I mean, rental's not a panacea.
Sorry, one more. The sizing thing.
Sizing, yes.
The sizing, which it's hard, but inevitably there isn't the broad size range that one would get at Topshop.
Yes, yeah, and it's an issue. Yeah, rental is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all of the ills of the fashion industry. I think it's a plank in the bridge that takes us to where we need to get to. The sizing issue is absolutely one, and in fact, our MyWardrobe HQ was started purely as a peer-to-peer fashion rental business, and the reason that it isn't anymore and that we actually take stock in from brands is because we need full size sets, and the sad reality was that we were getting people's wardrobes, beautiful wardrobes, as I'm sure yours is, but they tended to be in smaller sizes, and we know that that's totally unacceptable. If we're going to do this properly, it's got to be accessible for as many people as it possibly can be. Otherwise, it just isn't going to work. It really isn't going to work. Having said that, it's early days. You know, I certainly wouldn't say, hand on heart, that we've got a size range of, I don't know, 20 different sizes in everything at MyWardrobe HQ. We certainly don't. We're trying, we're getting there. And I think that's probably would be my answer to most of your questions, or most of the naysayers' questions, is that it's early days. We kind of know what the issues are. In terms of hygiene, yes, that's been brought up many, many times. We actually use ozone cleaning, which is environmentally better than dry cleaning, and also apparently gets rid of or any kind of bacteria. Now, whether it gets rid of any kind of virus as well, I'm not sure anyone's quite clear on that. I'm certainly not a scientist, so I'm not going to say that. But we've been told certainly that it's a pretty hygienic way of doing it. And actually, we leave things for more than 48 hours after wearing. So there's absolutely no chance that you could catch the virus from anything that you're renting. But sizing is absolutely a deal. And also, you know, getting the clothes to and from people is you know, of course we have logistics, which any other brand does. We encourage people who are close by to do it themselves and to come to us, but we know that isn't always going to work, and we certainly don't only want to be West London based. You know, we want to be national, we want to be international. So yeah, we know there's issues, but we're trying. We're getting there sort of slowly. We're overcoming them.
And would your response be the same to the argument that rental perpetuates this yearning for newness, and it actually just delays the disposal of fashion?
Well, that is an interesting one. But what's also interesting, if you look at what are our best sellers, if you like, they tend to be, they're not current season usually. They're just beautiful dresses that just stand out. In fact, one of them is about 10 years old, I think. It's just a really stunning, beautiful dress. It was actually Alexa Chung's dress. But you know, I get your point absolutely. But what I think is that I don't think you can get rid of that desire for something that's new to you and something that looks beautiful. I think it's very hard. If I knew how to get rid of that desire, you know, I would do, but I don't think you can do. So I think what you have to try to do is mitigate it. And you have to try and say, well, you know what, if you've got that desire, then it's probably better that you wear this dress that's been worn already by 20 people. You're only going to wear it once anyway. And, you know, then you go back to your kind of essential wardrobe that you've considered. And I think actually the most important thing that the pandemic has taught us, or anyone, is that what we can't do is this just buying something and just not even thinking about it and wearing it once and chucking it away. And actually, I do think there's been a change here, because I think prior to the lockdown, there was an awful lot of talk of Instagram influencers who were wearing an item once and then just getting rid of it and throwing it away. And you don't see that anymore. Well, it may still be happening, but people are not proud to talk about it anymore. And that for me is a move on.
Yeah, we have a lot of FashMash round tables amongst members, and the consensus there is that Instagram certainly has become a lot more wholesome.
Yeah,
and want to have a purpose there. The kind of purely commercial kind of here's my fashion haul style to influencing is not respected anymore. And actually that leads me perfectly onto Generation Z, because I read an article by Elizabeth Patton in the New York Times around this time last year, which was quite a concerning perspective on Generation Z. It was interviews, case studies, and there were a lot of young people saying, I would never be seen dead in this outfit once I've worn it on Instagram. I buy fast fashion. I don't think about the supply chain. It's not a concern for me. But then again, over lockdown, we have seen this huge uptake, particularly amongst Gen Z in the Depop. Well, they're called the Depop generation. Now, I wanted to know how you think the Depop generation might approach rental. At the moment, a UK survey by Mintel said that 46% of respondents aged 16 to 24 were not interested in clothing rental. And they cite lack of ownership as part of the problem, because they like to resell, and they like to resell their purchase and get it back into the cycle, which I think is a really interesting perspective. But they are the generation most driven by sustainability. So where do you expect they will go next? Where will they evolve?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? And all it ever says to me is that you really can't put Gen Z all together and say they do this, because they don't. They do totally different things. So half of them find sustainability the most important thing, and the other half are shopping at Boohoo. So clearly sustainability is not that important to them at all. But I think it is interesting. I think that I'm actually quite intrigued by your point about them not wanting rental because they want to sell on. Well, that's good. They're keeping the circular economy going, so that's fine. I actually think they're not using rental yet, because I don't think they've been offered it properly yet. And I would say that's our fault as well. I think the change came in the US when Rent the Runway came along, and it was such a viable alternative. It was so straightforward. It was so easy to use. It solved so many kind of everyday clothing issues that people just started to use it. And the people who use it an awful lot are the 18 to 25-year-olds in America, and they use it for everyday clothing, but for workwear. So I think I actually don't think that Gen Z has a problem with rental at all. In fact, there are an awful lot of rental businesses that have emerged over the last 2 or 3 years, run by Gen Z entrepreneurs. So I don't think they have an issue with it. I think it's just that we need to get a lot slicker at it. We need to get better at it.
Understood. And so if we're looking at green shoots and doing a bit of future gazing, this is where I now want to talk to you about your role as a director at the London Fashion Fund that we mentioned at the beginning. You mentioned these businesses that are new and looking at really interesting new circular business models, but what else on a wider scale in the industry is piquing your interest right now?
Well, I'll tell you, actually there are sort of couple of different areas that we're really focusing on. One of them is the fabric or the yarn. So it's getting right back to the yarn. And in fact, a business that we've just invested in, which I'm really excited about, it's called Hydro Cotton. And what they basically are trying to do is to grow cotton hydroponically using 90% less water than ordinary cotton, because the issue with cotton is the water that it takes to grow it. So these guys are engineers. They have started a trial in a field in Essex, and they're moving the trial to a couple of fields in Greece next year. So for me, that's really exciting. It's really getting right down into the fabric. Other areas that I think are interesting, the whole virtual fashion is one that it's been around for quite a long time now. It's being used quite extensively in gaming. And I don't know, there's obviously there's apps like Dressed where you can sort of, you can style your avatar for photo shoots and things. But I don't think it hasn't actually got to the stage where fashion brands are actually using it properly yet. But I think they will. And actually at the very beginning of lockdown, I was obsessed by the fact that what I wanted to do was my next Zoom call, I wanted to be wearing a virtual Chanel jacket. I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? I contacted all of these people that I knew were working on this kind of whole 3D photography and virtual simulation. And we all realised that, in fact, the technology has not quite got to that stage yet. But it will do, of course it will. And we would like to invest in someone who's doing that. The other business that I think is really exciting is it's a company called Post Carbon Lab, where they are producing fabric that photosynthesizes. So it absorbs carbon as you wear it and emits oxygen. And they reckon that a meter square of the fabric that they produced can absorb as much carbon as a 100-year-old oak tree. So you'd have to leave your jacket sort of by the window so that it could get the sun's rays or whatever. But that's what I'm really interested in. I'm interested in those things that sort of feel as if they're not quite here yet, but are coming, I think.
Yeah. What would your advice be to those seeking investment right now? Because it's got to be a hard time to be requesting that.
Well, interestingly, it's not actually. There still seems to be quite a high level of investment going on, but the investment's in tech.
Right.
It's if you're a fashion brand or a jewelry brand and you've got product, it's very difficult, and that's a shame because I still think there's room for beautiful product. I met an amazing jewelry designer recently who was actually renting her pieces and selling them, and she had an incredible supply chain, and she found it impossible to get any kind of investment at all. But if you're in tech, if you're on virtual, if you're in any of these kind of new ideas that are coming through that have sustainability at their core, then I think actually it's not that hard. Well, it's hard, but
Talking of hard and challenging times, this is where and this is kind of my final area that I want to focus on. I now want to turn to the high street and retail more generally. Where do we even begin? Is this going to be a question of survival of the fittest, Jane?
Yes, I think it is. It's odd, or what we're seeing is a real polarization, and I think we were starting to see this before the pandemic came along, and now I think it's just I think there will be an awful lot of businesses that won't survive at all. No question. That I don't see how they can survive. The margins that they were making when the shops were full are small, and the shops have not been full now since March. So I think any business that's reliant on bricks and mortar is going to have an issue. I think those businesses, obviously the direct-to-consumer businesses, the pure players, are having a much better time. But I think there does seem to be a polarization between those businesses that feel that they, in some way, need to be responsible, and there are those businesses that, quite honestly, don't think they give a shit. And I think it feels like there's a polarization in life at the moment, certainly in politics, I mean, and in the US, no question. But it does seem to me that businesses are going in one direction or the other. And I think those businesses, those high street businesses that can show that they really, that sustainability is important to them and it is about their survival, I think they probably will survive.
What does the high street look like in 3 years' time, in your vision, in your mind?
Well, it's hard to say, isn't it? I wonder whether I think there'll be the odd shop, and it'll all be just coffee shops and phone shops, and
Wow.
Well, and unless, I mean, you know, the other way to look at it is that, you know, rents have got to start coming down soon because there are so many empty stores already. We might see, if rents do come down, those stores perhaps coming back. And I've seen a little bit of this happening recently, these sort of, not sustainable but yes, sustainable department stores popping up. They tend to be as actual pop-up units, but where they'll sort of get a few people together who have a similar responsible outlook or an environmentally friendly outlook, and sort of all getting together and sort of sharing the rents and sort of displaying their wares, if you like, both online and actually in bricks and mortar. So it's more of a community experience, perhaps. I think that's maybe it's going to go in that direction.
It's interesting you mentioned a community experience, and so many have been saying that we're focusing on our community so much post lockdown, and that's where we're choosing to shop anyway. We're choosing to shop more locally.
Yes,
it all comes full circle. So we have a lot of questions coming in, I can see. So just one more from me for now. What is your hope for the industry?
My real hope is that I kind of feel like the lockdown was you know, I think we're got a bit addicted to fashion, to fast fashion, to just chucking stuff away and buying too much stuff and just getting rid of it. And I think almost we've been forced to go cold turkey. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing, because I think it's made people think. Some people obviously just have thought, I don't care, I'm just going to carry on because I enjoy doing it. But I think a lot of people have thought, hang on a minute, you know, what I was doing before wasn't right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit with me. They feel like this pandemic has, I don't know, it's an opportunity for change that wasn't there before. And I think, so I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. I think people are changing their relationship with fashion. And I think that's what needs to happen. And I'm starting to see it. Maybe I'm just overly hopeful, overly optimistic, but I'm starting to see it gathering momentum.
That's such a positive note to end on, and actually a really good kind of conclusion from our discussion 18 months ago, where you were seeing these first initial changes. Right, so I'm going to hand back to Rachel, who will take questions from the floor, and then we have a little quick fire round before we finish. So Rachel, do you want to join us again, please? Hello.
Hi, thank you guys. That was super insightful, and yeah, what a lovely optimistic note to end on, which is very positive. So we've had some great questions coming in. I'm just going to take them in the order that they've arrived. The first one says, great discussion. This is from Anonymous, so sorry, I don't know who it is. But do you believe blockchain technology as a brand transparency tool can help consumers in making better and more responsible buying decisions, and also help customers understand the true cost of the products they purchase?
Absolutely, 100%, 100%. And I almost wonder whether the government needs to step in and start to regulate and start to insist on suppliers using blockchain technology. I really am a huge believer. Yes.
Is that something that you guys are looking at through the fund?
Yes. Very much so.
Fascinating. Watch this space, everyone. Great. Next question is from somebody called Anna. She said, great insights. As it was mentioned, fashion is a business, and fast fashion business is mostly driven by newness. An online marketplace, Very, provides a figure that 90% of their customers shop through new in. How can circular fashion be incorporated at brands like these?
Yeah, it's really difficult. It's fascinating because every business that you talk to will tell you that their new in section is by far the most popular, and that's what most people go to, of course. And in fact, we had this conversation at MyWardrobe HQ, you know, at the very beginning, should we have a new in? And some people said, but it's not new, you know. And I said, well, it's new to us, you know, and I think you have to look at it in that way. You have to look at it that, you know, it's either that you just change your selection so that you've always got something that is new there. I don't necessarily think it has to be brand new, but I think it maybe needs to have been upcycled or new to that customer. But I think that's a really hard thing to sort of to stop people doing is that desire to want to see what the newest thing is. I mean, that's how we're kind of hardwired.
It's interesting though that you say, you know, new to that particular customer, because you're right. What's new to me when I'm looking for things would be different to you if you've already been shopping there or indeed owned that piece previously, as you're obviously proving with the rental. So maybe it's just changing that perception of what new actually means. Doesn't need to be fresh off of the manufacturing roll, does it?
Yeah, and perhaps showing what is amazing about that piece that makes it exciting. I don't know. Yeah,
indeed. Okay, John says, how does Jane see the role of super fast fashion brands in circularity? Rental ranges and recycled fabrication helps, but when brands like Boohoo, which turns over more than $1 billion per annum, generate so many product options to meet demand, how can they engage a customer that just wants cheap, fast fashion? Can these brands genuinely make a difference?
I knew he was going to ask this question. That's a really, really difficult one. I think they need to. They absolutely need to be more responsible in the way that they're selling fashion to people, because they're still selling it to be their whole way of selling product is all about, you know, where it's, you need something new today, you can just chuck it away, it's so cheap, it doesn't matter. I don't think that they particularly care. That's the problem. I think that if they really cared about it being responsible retailers, then I think they would do things very differently. But I don't think they do. I know that's not the answer to the question at all. I'm sorry, John. I think, yeah. I mean, yes, they could. I mean, they could do what H&M are doing. They could start at the very edges, and they could bring in some kind of responsible collection. They could have an upcycle collection. They could get their customers to send things back. They could recycle them. I'm not sure how many times you could wear a Boohoo piece of clothing anyway. Not very long, I imagine. So it's, I don't know. I think all we can kind of hope for is that it goes out of fashion, that way of buying.
Indeed, and it's great that we're having these conversations on that very note. I mean, putting people like that or businesses like that in the spotlight in the first place, which of course we've seen hugely this year.
Yeah.
Well, listen, that's the sort of the lot of what we've had come in from the audience. I just really quickly, before I hand back to Rosanna to do our sort of fun closing round, which is always our favorite bit of the conversation. Just from me, thank you so much to everybody for joining us this evening. Please do sign up via fashmash.co.uk to hear more about our next speaker. We're going to be focusing on fashion and biodiversity under the sustainability header next month, so a lot to learn, and we're really looking forward to that. Thank you again to our sponsor Klaviyo for this evening, and to Louise for being here and telling us a bit more about the business. And now back to you, Rosanna, for our closing question series. Thank you again so much, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So, Jane, quick fire.
Oh, shit.
Ready. Okay. Rental or resale?
Rental.
Dress from the waist up or full on fabulous?
Oh, full on fabulous, obviously.
High street or online?
Online.
2020 or 2030?
2030, I think.
That's quite an easy one to answer this year at this stage.
Yes.
Office or work from home?
Office.
And then finally, if you could rent from any wardrobe, any person, dead or alive, whose wardrobe would it be?
Sophia Coppola.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a good one. Brilliant. I think we should end on that note. Jane, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And
thank you so much, Rosanna. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, lots to think about. I'm sure if we meet again when we meet again, I hope in 18 months and perhaps have another to discuss, it will have moved on even more apace. So thank you very much indeed. And thank you everyone for watching. See you all soon. Thank you.